What does sex have to do with birth? Hopefully, you've been following us for a while, so you have some ideas and maybe even have your own list. Hi, I'm Debra. I am director of the award-winning documentary Orgasmic Birth and host of the Orgasmic Birth podcast. I'm excited to be sharing with you today. So if you're curious about how birth and sex are connected, or maybe you would just want to dive deeper and put together a good list, then you're in the right place. Today, I'm going to be sharing a topic that can transform the way you think about labor and birth forever. You'll learn 4 powerful secrets that unveil the deep connection between sex and birth to transform your birth experience. So, spoiler alert, yes, birth and sex aren't just loosely connected, they're deeply intertwined. When we honor this connection, we open the door to more joyful, empowered, and even pleasurable birth experiences. Yes, I am saying pleasurable. Stick with me. We're going to unpack this step by step. So whether you're pregnant, planning a family, maybe you're a doula, a nurse, a midwife, someone with a birth business, or simply intrigued by the idea of rethinking childbirth, let's explore together how birth is not just a physiologic process, but a profoundly intimate, emotional, and sensual journey. So let's begin by addressing the core question: why are birth and sex connected? To answer this, we need to talk about one of the key players in both sex and birth, our hormones. A key hormone, oxytocin, often called the love hormone, is released during acts of intimacy, such as cuddling, kissing, arousal, and orgasm. It's the hormone that fuels connection, trust, love, and bonding. But did you know it's also the main hormone that drives labor and birth? We've talked about this, and Dr. Sarah Buckley has joined us in earlier episodes. So if you really want to go into detail, definitely go back and listen to Dr. Buckley. But just briefly, here's how it works. During labor, oxytocin, produced in the brain, drips down through the hypothalamus and the pituitary, through the blood, bonds with the receptors on the uterus, and causes those uterine contractions. It also helps soften and open the cervix and continues to flow even after birth to safely help you to birth the placenta and to promote bonding between you and your baby. The highest oxytocin of a person's life happens in the moments after birth. And it's not just for the person giving birth, the baby's getting the benefit of all this oxytocin too. The easier oxytocin flows, the smoother and the gentler the labor process can be. Now, here's where it gets really fascinating. Oxytocin doesn't just flow automatically. It's actually a shy hormone. It needs the right conditions. It's stimulated when you feel safe, when you feel private, unobserved, loved, and relaxed. So think about it. Do you feel aroused or intimate in a cold, clinical, brightly lit room with strangers watching your every move? Probably not. And birth is no different. That's why we often say the right place to give birth would be the right place to make love. They require the same conditions. That's why creating an environment that feels warm, safe, and sensual can make a world of difference during labor. Think dim lights, calming music, comforting scents, and the presence of someone you trust, and if possible, someone you love. These elements help mimic the conditions under which oxytocin thrives, whether during lovemaking or birthing. But here's an important takeaway. Birth is not just about hormones. It's also about mindset. When we view birth as a continuation of our sexual journey rather than clinical or painful event, we unlock an entirely new way of thinking about labor. So really take a moment to think about that, right? Because when all we think about in preparing for birth is, oh my goodness, the pain, or I'm so afraid, or it's going to be more than I can handle. Imagine if you brought those feelings to sex on any night, whether it was alone, enjoying your own body, or with a partner. It would make that experience probably not the best. So we really have to unpack all the stories we've been told about birth. We have to get away from all the taboos where for how many years you probably haven't heard that birth is a part of your sexual life. And this is something that we need to transform. We need to really look at and say, what would it take for you to really see that connection and change your mindset about birth? So let's go to my second tip, the role of sexual organs in birth. So let's take this connection now a step further by exploring how the very organs involved in sex also all play a critical role in birth. Your vagina, labia, cervix, uterus, clitoris, and pelvic floor are all intimately involved in both acts of creation, sex and birth. During sexual arousal, vaginal tissues swell and soften. Similarly, during labor, your body produces the same natural lubrication, softening. It makes it easier for your baby to descend and for your body to open. And think about it. We all know, those of us that have vaginas, that in the right conditions, right, they lubricate, soften, and open. But if we're not in an environment that feels safe, that feels private, that feels welcoming, they will stay shut and stay dry. So when we think about how we prepare for birth and the conditions that many people are birthing in, it kind of makes sense that we're doing too many things that are pulling, cutting, and sucking babies out because we're not really looking at what does it take for the body to feel safe and private and relaxed so that the body can naturally lubricate and open. It was designed to give birth. So let's go a little further. The cervix remains closed most of your life, but it undergoes a profound transformation during labor, opening just as it does open during orgasm, although to a much larger degree. And the uterus, which contracts rhythmically during orgasm or climax, does the same thing during labor, only also with far greater purpose to help bring life into the world. What's more, the clitoris and surrounding tissues are incredibly sensitive, packed with thousands of nerves, somewhere between 8 and 10,000 nerve endings that respond to touch, pressure, and movement. During birth, these same areas can create sensations of pleasure and comfort and relief when stimulated gently. That's why practices like massage, masturbation, vibration, or gentle counter pressure can be so effective and even enjoyable. When we honor these parallels and treat birth as a natural extension of our sexuality, we begin to shift from fear and tension to curiosity and maybe even excitement. Third tip is bring pleasure into birth. Now, I know that some of you might still be thinking pleasure in birth. Is that really possible? And my answer is yes, absolutely. If you've been listening to a lot of our back episodes, then you know how much pleasure is possible in birth. And that's not to say that there might not be pain or challenge or intensity, but we still can have waves and moments of pleasure. Pleasure in birth can take many forms. It doesn't have to mean a literal orgasm, although for some people this is part of their experience. If you've watched our documentary, Orgasmic Birth, you see Amber, who shares her rolling orgasms in labor, completely unexpected. And if you're listening to our many birth stories throughout the podcast, podcast, you're hearing all different elements of pleasure. Some involve orgasm, some just involve touching themselves or finding comfort and pleasure with themselves or a partner. So instead of tapping into your body's natural capacity for pleasure, relaxation, and empowerment, too many people are tapping into fear. Here comes another one. Just that thought or saying that out loud or in your mind, right, is tightening you up. Where if you have a pleasure practice, you are going the other way, leaning into the opening for birth. So here are some ways to incorporate pleasure into your birth experience. Massage and touch. Gentle touch can release tension and stimulate oxytocin. This might include a partner or a doula massaging your shoulders, back, or feet. Some people even find nipple stimulation helpful during labor. Movement. Your body knows how to move. Trust it. Can you imagine if you were making love and you were told you have to stay completely still and you can't do anything else, right? So the same things. Listen to your body. Swaying, rocking, dancing, bouncing on a birth ball can not only relieve discomfort, but also connect you to your body's natural rhythms. Breath work. Deep, intentional breathing can help you focus, relax, and ride the waves of your sensations. Think of it as tuning into the flow of energy in your body. So again, are you seeing the similarities? There's movement, there's shifts in breath, right? There's touch. All these things that we bring to intimacy, we need to really consider how can we bring them to birth. Visualizations, close your eyes and imagine yourself opening like a flower, or visualize your baby gently journeying down through the birth canal. I remember thinking of each sensation as a hug, wrapping my baby in my love and hugging them into the world. There's so many ways. I love Nally Vinever, a wonderful midwife, a dear friend. She teaches with us at our Eat, Pray, Doula retreat in Bali. When she was giving birth, she talked about that the sensations were like her love with her partner were swollen, and it was their love that was trying to burst out. So there's so many ways to rethink when we take our mind and turn the way that we look at what we're feeling, look at the process, we get completely different sensations. And it can be incredibly powerful and pleasurable. So really think, I always say, create at least 5 visualizations that are going to help you connect with your body, feel safe, maybe even take you to a beautiful place that you've had a past association with pleasure or intimacy in. Remember too that every birth is unique, so pleasure might look different for you than it does for someone else. The goal isn't to force a specific experience, but to open yourself to the possibilities. So last is orgasmic birth. What does it really mean? And again, listen, we've had whole podcasts about this and how we came to develop orgasmic birth as a film and now a movement. But let's just for a minute talk again about the term orgasmic birth. Why it may sound like a lofty or unattainable idea, it's not necessarily about achieving a physical orgasm, although it might be. It's about experiencing birth in a way that feels empowering, powerful, and deeply fulfilling and satisfying. For some people, this is the literal sensation of pleasure or climax at some point during labor or birth. Again, Amber's rolling orgasms. If you haven't seen them, I would definitely go back and rent or purchase our documentary, Orgasmic Birth, to see that. For others, it's the emotional high of surrendering fully to the process and connecting with your body's power. And for many, it's simply about transforming fear into joy and reclaiming birth as a sacred sensual act. Here's the key. Orgasmic birth isn't a goal to check off. It's a mindset. It's embracing the full spectrum of sensations, trusting your body, allowing yourself to be fully present in the moment. When you do this, you're creating the conditions for pleasure, empowerment, and love to flow naturally. So as we kind of wrap up, I invite you again to reflect on this question. How can you bring more love, intimacy, and pleasure into your birth preferences? I would love for you to respond. Post on Instagram and tag us at Orgasmic Birth. How are you bringing more love, intimacy, and pleasure into your birth preferences? Birth is sacred and sensual, and when we honor it as such, we open ourselves up to a world of possibilities. Just like we can't think ourselves to orgasm, although if you can, let me know that. Like in the in the film, actually, when Sally met Harry, and she was at Cat's Deli in New York and had this great orgasm, and the person across the room said, "I want what she's having." But for most people, having an orgasm is about getting out of our head. If we're thinking the 3 things we have to do tomorrow, or what we didn't finish today, or if the kids might wake any second, those are thoughts that immediately shut down the process. But when we can fully let go, when we can be in the moment, we can allow our body to move, our breath to flow, when we can trust what we're experiencing now, that's where the pleasure and that's where the orgasm can come from. So be really careful. So many people in labor are thinking, they're thinking, here comes another one. This is what I'm going to do. What's going on here? And I often find when the mind gets involved, the body takes much longer to birth the baby. So if you can let the mind go and get into your body, be present with what's going on, connect to your baby, allow yourself to be in that safe, private, sensuous space, then the pleasure flows so much easier. So thank you for joining me on this journey today. If the conversation resonated with you, I encourage you to subscribe, share this episode with someone that might benefit from it, and please leave us a review. Your feedback helps us spread the message that birth can be an empowering and, yes, even orgasmic experience. If you have a birth story or you have an expert that you know you'd like to see on the podcast, please write us. We're always open to hear your suggestions and your feedbacks, and welcome your joyful, challenging, difficult, pleasurable, and orgasmic birth stories. Remember, you have the power to rewrite the narrative of birth, to reclaim it as a joyful, intimate, and loving act. Until next time, I hope you'll stay connected and live and birth with pleasure.